Shri Ramachandra Avirbhav Mahotsava Titi Ki Jai, Ramanavami Ki Jai. So,
Make sure you don't want to share with us.
hang on a second.
Dr. Prabhu?
Yes.
I was just going to say that we do have a number of devotees who can't see this, 4 devotees that can't see this. You might want to, if it's possible in your presentation, say this is a picture of this, this picture of that.
There's a description all the way through, no problem.
Okay, that's fine.
You'll get, actually, anyway, we're looking at a picture of Srila Prabhupada. There's a story many years ago in Hyderabad where 2 of Prabhupada's disciples were discussing what the Rama in the Maha Mantra was referring to. And one was saying it was Lord Ramachandra, and the other one was saying it was Balaram. And they brought the conflict to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada did something interesting with that. He said, you're both right. That's the way he dealt with that particular situation. And many years have gone by, and some of us have heard that Jiva Goswami refers to this Rama in the Maha Mantra as Radharaman. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also follows that line. But of course, anyone, especially a Nitya Leela Parishad like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Madhurya Rati, they don't look left or right. Everything is Kishora Krishna Bhajendra Nandana. So I was working with a sannyasi years ago, and he informed me of this Siddhanta by Jiva Goswami and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. But then I brought up this chant that I just went through, this Krishna, 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 Hey, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshramam. So I said, turn that into Krishna, Rama Raghava. Now that's Lord Chaitanya chanting during his tour in South India. So he just laughed and he said, we're not against Ram. And although Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, Krishna and Ram, they're non-different. Krishna came as Ram to stop Ravan from tormenting the 3 worlds, but also to show the path of an ideal king, but also to show Dharma to everyone. Very high standard of Dharma. So both Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda played roles in Ram Leela, Nityananda in his childhood, and Lord Chaitanya displayed a form, a 6-arm form, Sadbhuja, and 2 of those arms were holding a bow and an arrow, and they represented Ram. And there's another incident where Murari Gupta nearly became suicidal because he couldn't follow Lord Chaitanya's directive to chant Krishna Nam. He couldn't give up the chanting of Ram. And Lord Chaitanya, he glorified Murari Gupta for remaining loyal to his Lord. So there are many devotees, and like Hanuman, for example, and they totally dedicated to their Ishtadev, which in the case of Hanuman is Sri Ram. And they're aware of Krishna, and they're aware of his Leela, but they're still dedicated to Ram. So different devotees, their natural flow of heart may go to their Ishtadev. So today is the appearance of Lord Ram, and his story is the oldest recorded legend on earth, except for perhaps a few other Vedic Puranas. Lord Ram's Leela took place in Treta Yuga, according to the Vedas and devotional saints, including Srila Prabhupada, and that tells us that Ram appeared in this world about 2 million years ago. Today, we'll pass over the entire Ramayana in less than an hour. That means we'll be skimming like a smooth, flat stone skips across the surface of water. Something like that. We'll be touching and skipping across the endless ocean of Ram's Leela. It was actually Brahma who inspired Valmiki's Ramayana. He appeared to Valmiki after he spontaneously cursed a hunter for cruelly killing a crane during a mating dance. Brahma said it was he who inspired this beautiful verse in Sanskrit to spring from Valmiki's heart with such deep feeling that he should use this mood and feeling to meditate and tell the story of Ram. So I have up on the screen a picture of Lord Brahma from Thailand. Valmiki Muni composed the original Ramayana, Sanskrit poem, from a darshan of the Leela he had in Samadhi. For that he is called Adi Kavi, or the original poet. Valmiki lived at the same time as Ram. This stone carving in this slide is found at the top of a hill at a place traditionally held to be the site of his ashram. And you can tell by this deity is very old by the smoothness of his lower body, which has been touched by millions of human hands out of respect for the great sage. Valmiki's poem was memorized again and again and became an oral tradition, passed from one generation to the next, inspiring the many ideals and values of Indian spiritual culture. Great poets and writers have retold Valmiki's epic in different languages in India, like Bengali, Tamil, and Hindi. The most famous of these Book of Leelas of Ram is Ramacharita, written about 450 years ago by a world-class poet, Tulsidas. Srila Prabhupada said that this Ramacharita was the only classical literature in Hindi. And this book is read and sung in temples all over India. But it should be noted that the Ramacharita, while a devotional classic, is not a complete Ramayana, but parts of it. And some of the stories change. In South India, Valmiki's Ramayana is considered by many to be the Ramayana as it is. Today, we'll be hearing the storyline of Valmiki's poem. Long, long ago, the mighty kingdom of Koshala spread far and wide, north of the sacred river Ganges. Koshala's capital city, Ayodhya, sparkled like a jewel on the shores of the holy Sarayu River. In many ways, Ayodhya was equal to the heavenly city of King Indra, the ruler of the demigods. King Dasarath of the Sun dynasty ruled the kingdom from this beautiful city and was loved and honored by his subjects. He was blessed in many ways, but he had one great sorrow. He did not have a son to succeed him to the throne. After consulting with his guru Vashishta, the elder Brahmins in his court decided that the king should perform an Ashvamedha Yajna for acquiring a son. A young ascetic named Rayashringa was called in to lead the powerful Vedic mantras. As the fire increased towards the end of the yajna, a celestial being arose from the flames and gave the king a pot of sweet rice and said in a deep voice, "O king of men, please accept the fruit of your sacrifice, this rice pudding made by the gods. Give it to your queens and you will be blessed with sons." Dasarath gave the sweet rice to his 3 queens. In the course of time, they all became expectant mothers. The demigods who attended the yajna were also instructed by Brahma, who knows past, present, and future, to travel to South India and have powerful sons with a race of talking forest monkeys to help Ram later in his Leela. For Ravan did not protect himself from men or animals. Hanuman became the son of the wind god. Bali became the son of Indra. Angada the son of Vishwamitra, and so on. At a time when 5 planets were in exaltation, the Sun, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus, Sri Ram appeared as the first son of King Dasarath by Queen Kausalya. Queen Kaikeyi gave birth to Bharat, and Queen Sumitra had the twins Lakshman and Satrughna. As the children grew up, the king's joy knew no bounds. When the boys reached 5 years of age, they were given to the family guru Vashishta Muni for spiritual training. The princes were then taught the fighting arts, how to ride horses, elephants, and chariots, and became famous for their excellent skills in archery. One day, a sage who was once a world-conquering king came to visit Dasarath. Vishwamitra was honored by Dasarath, who promised to fulfill any desire the sage had. But Vishwamitra had an unusual request. Some powerful Rakshasas were disturbing a yajna he was performing at his ashram. He wanted Dasarath's 16-year-old son, Ram, to go to help him defeat the demons. Dasarath was mortified at first and offered to go himself with his army, but the sage became angry, and Vashishta assured the king that Vishwamitra was powerful and would protect Ram. He also suggested Lakshman go with him. Vishwamitra became the 3rd guru of Dasarath's sons, after Vashishta and their martial arts guru. One of the first things he taught Ram and Lakshman were mantras to protect them from hunger and fatigue. He also told them the story of their great ancestor, King Bhagarata. On the way to Vishwamitra's ashram, they passed through a desolate forest that had been named after a demoness, Taraka, who had decimated the area and population there. On the encouragement of Vishwamitra, Ram engaged in a fierce battle with the demoness and ended her sinful life. After Ram defeated the Rakshashi Taraka, the demigod showered flowers, and Indra called out from the heavens, telling Vishvamitra to give Ram celestial weapons for his future service to the demigods, for dissipating the Rakshasa race. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, of wielders of weapons, I am Ram. Finally, they arrived at Vishvamishra's ashram, and they all honored prasadam and took rest. Ram and Lakshman guarded the Yajna for 5 days and nights, and then, on the 6th night, they successfully defended the sacrificial fire from the demon attack in the skies. Ram ended the life of Rishabha, of the Rakshasa, Subbaru, and threw Maricha a great distance into the ocean by a wind arrow from his bow. After the completion of the sacrifice, a very satisfied Vishvamitra invited Ram and Lakshman to a Svayambara of Janaka's daughter in Mithila. King Janak had arranged a contest to win the hand of his daughter, Princess Sita. They were still looking for the prince who could successfully lift and string the mystic bow given by his ancestors, by Lord Shiva. On the way to Mithila, they came upon an abandoned ashram of Gautama Rishi. It was there, in a fit of rage, that the Rishi had cursed his wife, Ahalya, to become invisible to all creation for a long time, after she offered herself to Indra, who was attracted by her beauty. But seeing her remorse and remembering her years of service to him, he gave her the benediction of being released from the curse when Lord Ram would touch her with his feet. Here, Ahalya reappears after being touched by the lotus foot of Ram. When Vishvamitra entered the city of the two princes, everyone was struck by the beauty of the two sons of Dasarath. When Sita saw Ram in a garden near the palace, the goddess of fortune fell in love with him on first sight. After many princes from many lands could not even lift the bow, it took an estimated 300 or 400 men to lift it. Ram picked up the bow effortlessly, and when he bent it back to string it, it cracked so thunderously it knocked many of the surrounding audience unconscious. And this is a picture, I'm showing one of the paintings by Muralidhar. It's a dynamic picture. The other ones are a little static. But the bow is way too big, and Prabhupada, he objected to this. He said, no, the bow was a mystic bow. It wasn't like this. It wasn't so big. So, Sita and Ram were married. And in great joy, King Janak, he called for Dasarath and the royal family to come to Mithila, and all 4 sons were given wives by King Janaka. Out of a terrible storm, the fearful Parashuram appeared to the wedding party on their way back to Ayodhya. Curious about this prince who broke the bow of Shiva, Parashuram offered Ram a similar bow from Vishnu. He said if he could string it, he would consider Ram worthy of a fight. Over the protests of Dasarath, Ram boldly stepped forward and accepted the bow and strung it so quickly, charging it with an arrow next to his ear pointed at Parashuram's heart, that the powerful incarnation of Vishnu felt his strength slipping from him and realized that his time as avatar was over. Ram gave Parashuram the choice of whether to lose his mobility or give Ram the fruits of his austerities. Parashuram accepted the latter and went to the Himalayas to perform more austerities. 12 wonderful years passed in Ayodhya. Bharat was away visiting relatives when Dasarath decided to anoint Ram as crown prince as his successor. There was a roar of approval as Ram was everyone's favorite and the whole of Ayodhya celebrated. That is, all but one maidservant of Queen Kaikeyi, the mother of Bharat. At first, Kaikeyi was overjoyed to hear that Ram was going to be coronated. She considered Ram like her own son. But the hunchback maidservant, Mantara, threw the necklace that Kaikeyi gave her aside and chastised Kaikeyi for not perceiving that Dasarath was doing something underhanded while her son Bharat was away. Kaikeyi resisted for some time, but Mantara won in the end and convinced her on 2 points. 1, Bharat would become the errand boy of Ram, or might be in danger and thought of as a threat, and that she, the youngest and most beautiful of the 3 queens, would lose her position as first wife of Dasarath and become nothing but a maidservant to Queen Kaushalya, the mother of Ram. Mantara reminded Kaikeyi of 2 favors or boons that Dasarath had offered her many years ago for saving his life in a battle. She convinced Kaikeyi to ask for those boons now. First, to install Bharat as crown prince, and second, to banish Ram to the forest for 14 years, so there would be no trouble for Bharat to assume the leadership of Ayodhya. Kaikeyi went to the chamber of wrath in the palace and threw herself on the floor, scattering her hair and jewelry on the floor. An unsuspecting Dasarath tried to change her mood by giving his word that he would punish anyone who might have offended her or give her anything to make her happy. She saw her moment and demanded the boons promised to her. Dasarath went into shock. Throughout the night, Dasarath pleaded and scolded Kaikeyi not to ruin everything, but she hardened her heart and demanded that the king keep his word. Mantara had coached her well. Kaikeyi shamelessly had called to the chamber and delivered the news to Ram herself. Dasarath, unable to speak, Ram accepted these 2 boons without flinching, happy to fulfill the promise of his father to his queen. Ram duly informed his mother of the turn of events. Then, followed by Lakshman, informed Sita and instructed her to take care of Queen Kaushalya and his father in these difficult times. Sita was offended and said she would go where her husband goes, although Ram tried to dissuade her, pointing out the hardships and dangers of forest life. She convinced Ram of her resolve to go with him. Lakshman was angered by the whole situation so much that he was prepared to take up arms against his father and anyone who supported this outrageous proposal. But Ram pacified Lakshman, and then Lakshman also placed his case before Ram that he should follow him to the forest. Ram told Sita to give their wealth away in charity. The 3 exiles accepted bark cloth from Queen Kaikeyi and bid farewell to their family. They ascended the royal chariot to leave Ayodhya. The citizens of Ayodhya turned out for the event. They begged the charioteer to go slow and followed the chariot to the banks of the Sarayu River. In the middle of the night, Ram got the charioteer up, Lakshman and Sita also, and they left the citizens of Ayodhya while they slept and crossed the river. After they crossed the Sarayu River, Ram bid farewell to Sumantra, their charioteer, and told him to tell their father they were well. They quickly became the guests of a tribal chieftain in the area named Guha, who helped them arrange another boatman to take them across the larger river, Ganges. But the boatman refused to take them until he had washed their feet and drank the water. And that's the smart boatman. Here Guha is seen crossing the river with the royal exiles. The royal exiles then visited the ashram of Varadaraj Muni, who told them that Chitrakoot mountain was a good place to stay. So Lakshman built a cottage there, and the exiles began their forest life. Sumantra, the charioteer, had returned to Ayodhya to tell King Dasarath that Sita, Ram, and Lakshman were now alone in the forest. After a short time, Dasarath died of a broken heart, calling on the name of Ram in his last breaths. On the death of Dasarath, messengers were sent for Bharat, who was visiting his mother's relatives in Kaikeya. When Bharat returned to Ayodhya and found out what his mother had done, he renounced her then and there. He was plunged into an ocean of grief that had swallowed the whole of Ayodhya. After looking after the funeral rites of his father, Vashishta Muni and other royal counselors encouraged him to take the throne, as Ayodhya was vulnerable without a leader. Bharat flatly refused and organized an expedition to find Ram and bring him back to Ayodhya. When they finally arrived at Chitrakoot mountain, Bharat embraced Ram. Bharat had brought the entire court with him and an army. Here, the queens and royal entourage all met with the royal exiles. And I love this painting. It's ladies and gents. So the ladies are visiting Sita, and the men are visiting Ram and Lakshman. Bharat did his best to try to convince Ram to come back to Ayodhya, and even offered to take his place in exile. But Ram was resolved to fulfill the word of his father's promise to Queen Kaikeyi. In the end, Bharat accepted the shoes of Ram and declared that they would be placed on the throne during the 14 years of his exile. He vowed to live outside of Ayodhya like a hermit, just as Ram was living, and only act as a regent until Ram returned. He told Ram if he did not return on the very day the 14 years were over, he would throw himself into a funeral pyre. Shortly after the visit of the Ayodhya citizens in Chitrakoot, Ram decided to move from that place, thinking that others would try to visit. They entered the Dandaka forest and were attacked by a gigantic demon. The demon even managed to snatch Sita for a few minutes until Ram and Lakshman finally subdued him and killed the monster. News of this spread throughout the Dandaka forest, and the rishis made a formal request to Ram to protect them from similar man-eating demons who roamed that forest. Ram agreed, and Sita, Ram, and Lakshman lived among the rishis for the next 10 years. On one visit to Atri Rishi's ashram, The sage gave Ram celestial weapons, and his wife, Anasuya, gifted Sita with a celestial sari that never soiled. Towards the end of the 10 years, Agastya Rishi told Ram about a singularly beautiful place called Panchavati and suggested that it would be an ideal place for them to spend the last few years of their exile. So they crossed the mountains to the south. Along the way, they met an aging vulture king named Jatayu, who was an old friend of Dasarath. He happily showed them the rest of the way to Panchavati. Jatayu offered to look out for the exiles during their stay there. When they arrived at Panchavati, it was even more beautiful than Agastya's description. Lakshman built another wonderful cottage there. Then one fateful day, a female Rakshashi discovered their cottage. She had a big nose and ears, wild copper hair, and a protruding belly. On seeing Ram, she fell madly in love. She introduced herself as the sister of Ravan and also of Kara, the leader of about 14,000 Rakshasas in nearby Janastan. As she made her course advances, Ram joked that he already had a wife, but that handsome Lakshman was alone. She looked at Lakshman, who was also strongly built and beautiful, and approached him. Lakshman joked back that she should not accept second best, and that she should indeed become the wife of Ram, who would give up his present wife with her sunken belly. Well, that's when things got out of hand. This demoness, who is too simple to get the jest, saw Sita as her only obstacle in becoming Ram's wife, and so she lunged at Sita to devour her right on the spot. Ram stopped her aggressive behavior and pushed her back. He then told Lakshman to disfigure her and send her on her way. So Lakshman quickly cut off her ears and nose, and Surpanaka ran screaming into the jungle. Surpanaka ran back to Kara in nearby Janastan. And Kara brought his whole army. Actually, she complained to Kara, and then Kara first sent 14 of his best warriors to make short work of the new intruders and hand their bodies over to Surpanaka so she could drink their blood. But when they arrived, Ram made short work of them. Then Surpanaka ran back to Kara, and Kara brought his whole army to Panchavati. Ram sent Lakshman and Sita to a nearby cave, and in a brilliant display of the power of Godhead, like a firebrand, Ram destroyed the entire army of demons with a blur of sharp arrows. The demigods got chicken skin as they watched from the skies above. That day, Dandaka Forest was liberated from all those terrible demons of horrible deeds. Of wielders of weapons, I am Ram. Surpanaka and a few survivors from that battle flew back to Lanka Island and reported the news directly to Ravan. Ravan couldn't believe his ears that one man had destroyed Kara, Dushana, and his 14,000 terrible Rakshasas at Janastan. But he finally understood what they were saying was true. Surpanaka distorted her story a little bit to make it sound like she was trying to capture Sita for Ravan. She knew how to push Ravan's buttons. Ravan had collected quite a harem for himself over the years and was fond of very beautiful women. Surpanaka described Sita as the most beautiful princess in the three worlds. Ravan became intoxicated with the idea of adding Sita to his harem. Ravan convinced his court magician, Maricha, under the penalty of death, to participate in a plan to kidnap Sita. Maricha had retired from demon life and was living like a hermit after Ram had thrown him many years ago into the ocean. In the end, Maricha decided within himself that it was better to die at the hands of Ram than Ravan. Smart demon. Anyway, his role was to take the form of an extraordinarily beautiful deer and attract Sita Devi to want him as an ashram pet. While Maricha led Ram deep into the forest, Ravan would kidnap Sita. The plan ran almost to perfection. Sita begged Ram to catch the beautiful deer for a pet. It was so beautiful that Sita wanted to take it back to Ayodhya at the end of their exile. Lakshman suspected a Rakshasa trick as they had never seen. He had never seen a form like this in the natural creation. Ram marked his suspicion but decided to try to catch the deer, and if it proved to be false, he would kill it. Ram left Lakshman to protect Sita as he ran in pursuit of the deer into the forest. After some time, it became clear to Ram that the deer was a decoy. With one arrow, he felled the false deer that turned back into Maricha as he fell to the ground. As Maricha was dying, he called out in a voice that sounded just like Ram's, "Alas, Lakshman, Sita, help!" Sita was thrown into an ocean of anxiety, hearing the voice of her Lord. She commanded Lakshman to go see what was the matter. Lakshman refused on the grounds that no one could put Ram into difficulty. Sita became more and more upset until she finally accused Lakshman of having some selfish interest in her, and this was the reason Lakshman was not running to Ram's aid. Sita's words burned Lakshman's ears. Unable to tolerate the insults, Lakshman agreed to go after Ram and left her unattended. Tulsidas says that Lakshman made a mystic circle of protection in the ground around her before he left and begged her not to go outside of it. Ravan appeared at the cottage in the dress of a sadhu after Lakshman was out of sight. In begging food, Sita was tricked into crossing out of the circle. Ravan threw off his disguise and boldly proposed that Sita become his foremost queen. Sita replied with sharp words, rebuffing the gross advances of Ravan, but was helplessly dragged away to his chariot behind some trees. The mystic chariot rose up into the air with Sita crying for help. Jatayu, the aged vulture king, was dozing nearby in a tree when he heard Sita's cries. Jatayu saw Ravan's chariot and flew into its path, challenging the king of the Rakshasas. A fierce battle ensued, where Jatayu wounded Ravan and even destroyed his chariot. But in the end, Ravan cut off his wings, and Jatayu fell to the forest floor, mortally wounded. Ravan took Sita and rose up into the sky with his Rakshasa magic and flew back to Lanka with his prize, not knowing that he was holding his own death. Of course, we know that this is a false Sita. It's a represented Sita. Meanwhile, far in the forest, Ram met Lakshman on his way back to the cottage. He couldn't believe Lakshman had left Sita unguarded, since it was definitely a Rakshasa trick that drew him into the forest. They both ran back to the cottage and Sita was gone. Neither Ram nor Lakshman wanted to believe Sita was gone. They searched around the cottage, but to no avail. Ram became half mad, looking for Sita, and Lakshman fought off his depression, trying to convince Ram that Sita was still alive. Little time later, they came upon Jatayu in his last moments, who managed to tell Ram that Ravan had taken Sita in a southerly direction. So they continued their search, traveling south through a dense jungle, and a monster named Kadamba appeared and attacked them, but the brothers managed to sever his long arms. They then found out that this creature was a demigod who had been cursed and could not be killed with weapons. Following his directions, they built a funeral pyre and burned his hideous body. When he appeared out of the flames in a celestial form, he told the royal brothers that further south was Pampa Lake, where they could make an alliance with a former monkey king named Sugriva, and he would help them find Sita. When they arrived at Pampa Lake, they came upon Matanga Rishi's ashram and his disciple, an old woman, ascetic named Subari. Matanga Rishi had left many years before, but he told his disciple to wait for Ram and serve him when he came. So she picked fruits for many years, waiting for Ram's arrival. And when they finally did arrive, she offered those fruits to Ram. And Ram noticed that some of them had been tasted already. But Ram understood that she was just trying to see if they were sweet enough to offer him. After offering the fruits, the elderly Sabari asked permission to join her Gurudev, who had left this world many years before and left in their presence. Sugriva and his small band of exiles saw Ram and Lakshman walking alone along the banks of the Pampa Lake. They were viewing them from Rishyamukha mountain, where they had taken shelter in exile. Sugriva sent his minister Hanuman to greet them and to find out if they were friend or enemy. Hanuman had the power to change his form and first appeared as a Brahmin to ask his questions. And Ram was charmed by his sweet language. Feeling confident, Ram and Lakshman were the highest expression of Kshatriya Dharma. Hanuman changed back into his original form, and then he expanded himself to take Ram and Lakshman on his shoulders to see his master. Ram and Sugriva exchanged their stories. Bali, Sugriva's powerful brother, had punished Sugriva unjustly and banished him from their kingdom. To add insult to injury, Bali took Sugriva's wife to be his own. Ram empathized with Sugriva and vowed to help him defeat Bali. But Sugriva told Ram of Bali's supernatural strength, so Ram had to demonstrate his prowess to Sugriva before he believed that he could overcome his powerful brother. So Ram shot an arrow through 7 royal palms in a row, and then his arrow returned to his quiver. Ram then made a plan for Sugriva to challenge Bali to a fight. Ram had a boon that anyone who faced him in battle, Bali would get half his strength. So if you do the math, that means Bali will be stronger than any opponent he fights in a battle. Not that Ram couldn't defeat Bali, but for one reason, he shot Bali during the fight from a hidden place. One reason he did was to honor the boon of Brahma. As Bali was mortally wounded by Ram's arrow, while he was engaged in fighting another, he complained bitterly for the devious way that Ram, who was famous for righteousness, fatally shot him. In the end, however, after Ram explained that even in the forest he was upholding Dharma, and that Bali had sealed his fate by unlawfully taking Sugriva's wife. Bali accepted Ram's explanation and began to glorify him. He nobly gave a golden necklace given to him by Indra to his brother Sugriva, and his only request was that they take care of his son, Angada. Ram and Sugriva assured him of this, and he left his body. The rainy season had set in, so Ram had to wait for another few months before the search for Sita could begin, with all the forest monkeys and bears. Finally, 4 search parties were sent out in the 4 directions, and Hanuman was in Angada's party going south. Ram gave Hanuman his royal ring to show to Sita to convince her that he was his messenger. After a long and adventurous journey, Angada's party arrived on the South Indian shore. They had passed the allotted time Sugriva had given them under the penalty of death. So Angada decided, rather than returning to die, they should just fast to death on the South Indian shore. It just so happened that Sampanu, Jatayu's long-lost brother, thought he would have an easy feast when he heard the monkeys talking about dying on the shore for failing to find Sita. But with his sharp vision, Sampanu could see all the way to the island of Lanka across the ocean. He informed the search party of Ravana's city at Lanka. It was a great distance to jump, and finally Hanuman was encouraged by Jambavan to make the attempt. Hanuman made it all the way to Lanka Island and entered Ravana's city at night, reducing his size to about that of a cat. After an exhaustive search of Lanka and Ravana's palace, Hanuman finally located Sita under an Ashok tree in the royal garden behind Ravana's palace. As Hanuman observed from a tree, Ravan came to the grove and tormented Sita. And there's a famous scene where Sita takes a blade of grass and chastises Ravan severely, telling him that Ram is surely coming to kill him for his cowardly act. Ravan responded by reminding Sita that he had given her a year to submit to him, and that only 2 months remained. He said after that time, he would have his cooks serve Sita for his breakfast. After Ravan left the grove, Hanuman contacted Sita and gave her the ring from Ram. He offered to take her right then and there, but Sita said that the Rakshasas would pursue them and it would be difficult for Hanuman to fight while holding her. Anyway, she told Hanuman she didn't want to be touched by any other male than Ram. Somehow, Sita had a jewel hidden in her sari and gave it to Hanuman to give to Ram, so that he could understand that he had found her. Before Hanuman left Lanka, he trashed the royal garden and defeated and crushed a number of Rakshasas until finally Indra, the most formidable son of Ravan, was sent and bound Hanuman up with a Brahmastra weapon. Hanuman was brought before Ravan, who ordered his death, but Vibhishana spoke up that envoys and messengers should not be killed. They can only be punished. Ravan had Hanuman's tail set on fire, and as he was being paraded through the city and being abused by the citizens of Lanka, Hanuman broke his bonds and set the entire city ablaze. Then he leaped back to the southern shore and was greeted with a hero's welcome. Hanuman and Angada's party returned victoriously to Kushkunda and even trashed a fruit grove in celebration. Sugriva heard the news from one of the guards and knew they had been successful. Hanuman related the whole story to Ram and moved him to tears. Ram embraced Hanuman and told him he could never repay him for his wonderful service. Ram organized the Vanara and Bear army, and they marched to the south Indian shore, now known as Rameshwaram. On the beach, Ram offered worship to Lord Shiva. So many in South India point to this as proof that Shiva is higher than Vishnu. Actually, this worship was more along the lines of pacifying Lord Shiva, as Ravan was a great devotee of his, and now, because he had kidnapped Sita, he was finished. Ram was just informing Shiva of the situation so he wouldn't be drawn in to the conflict. Meanwhile, in Lanka, Maya, the architect of the demons, had finally restored most of Lanka to its previous glory. Ravan held war council in case Ram managed to cross the Indian Ocean to Lanka. In this meeting, mostly there was boasting and oaths of loyalty. Vibhishan, however, spoke in favor of returning Sita, as he felt that the powerful Ram would destroy their race otherwise. Ravan's pride in his own invincibility and his attachment for Sita made him insult Vibhishan. So Vibhishan decided to leave Lanka. He took 4 of his loyal ministers, and they flew by their Rakshasa magic to the southern shore where the army and Ram had assembled. At first there was suspicion of their motives with Sugriva and other leaders, but Hanuman remembered Vibhishan speaking up on his behalf. Ram accepted Vibhishan in their ranks and vowed never to reject anyone who sincerely comes to take shelter of him. After Vibhishan was accepted, Sugriva asked how to cross the vast ocean to Lanka. Vibhishan suggested petitioning the sea god. Ram thought it was a good idea and petitioned the sea god for 3 days, but the sea god did not even bother to respond. So Ram became angry and started discharging fiery arrows into the ocean until all the creatures were breaking the surface in discomfort from all the heat. Then the sea god appeared himself and begged forgiveness. He said that one of the Vanaras was the son of Vishvakarma, the architect of the demigods. He said that the ocean was normally very rough there, but he would calm the seas so they could build a bridge. Numberless Vanaras went to work on a bridge, and they completed it in 4 days. This picture shows, it's kind of cute, they're showing the monkeys writing Ram's name on the rocks so they float, and this is perhaps from the Ramatrit Manas, but in Valmiki's description, it's a little different. They were throwing mountain peaks and trees into the ocean. You can see by this satellite photo that the bridge is still there. It's called the Pak Strait. And leave it to the Muslims to name it some Adam's Bridge. But they know it's very, very old. And the bridge was above water. This is like a sandbar with coral underneath. And it was above water in the last 100 years or so, and now it's about a couple of feet under the water. But more recently, about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, Sonia Gandhi proposed that they plow a channel so ships could go through this part of the Indian Ocean. But there was a big backlash with Hindus that said it would be sacrilege to plow through this bridge. So I'm sure Sonia Gandhi fired a few of her advisors after that fiasco. Sugriva joyfully announced the bridge was ready, and Ram and the army crossed this wonderful bridge to Lanka. They set up camp at Suvela Mountain and planned their attack after observing Lanka from a mountaintop. And here Ravan is holding his war council as the siege of Lanka is imminent. The Vanara host swept down and surrounded the city after a last-minute attempt at diplomacy wherein Gada demanded Ravan's surrender of Sita. The battle commenced. The monkeys used trees and stones, and the Rakshasas used chariots, arrows, javelins, and mystic weapons. Indrajit was particularly troubled in this battle with his Rakshasa magic of becoming invisible and attacking from the skies. At one point, he bound both Ram and Lakshman in a Naga weapon, but Garuda made an appearance, and the spell of the snake weapon was broken. Indrajit also devastated the battlefield with another mystic weapon from the skies. One of the Vanara physicians requested Hanuman to get some herbs from a mountain in the Himalayas. As Hanuman approached the herbs on this mountain in the Himalayas, the herbs hid themselves, and finally Hanuman just uprooted the mountain and brought the whole thing back to the battlefield. And all over India you'll see this image of Hanuman. I don't have it here, but it's later. I have one image, but it's an image you see all over India. That's how they worship Hanuman, with the mountain. So Ram and Lakshman and the other Vanara heroes had many victories, and one by one, the famous Rakshasa generals were defeated. This is a mask from Bali that represents Kumbhakarna, a giant Rakshasa. He was awakened from his sleep to save Ravan and the Rakshasa race from destruction. It was a desperate attempt. He was meant to sleep by some boon from Brahma for 6 months, because he would just devour everything in sight. So here's a drawing of them waking up Kumbhakarna. The giant Rakshasa, after hearing the desperate plea of Ravan, entered the battlefield and scooped up hundreds of monkeys, eating them like rice. He terrorized the battlefield for a short time, but Ram finally finished him. Ravana's resources were exhausted, and he finally organized the remaining army and wreaked havoc on the Vanara forces. In a confrontation with Lakshman, Lakshman was struck by a mystic lance from Ravan in his chest, and Hanuman was asked to bring more herbs. Finally, there was a battle between Ram and Ravan. Indra, the king of heaven, sent down his chariot and charioteer to serve Ram in the final battle as Ravan was fighting from a chariot. The conflict was like two constellations colliding. In the end, Ram launched a mystic Brahmastra arrow that pierced the mystic armor of Ravan, and Ravan fell dead on the battlefield. Vibhishan was declared the new king, and Hanuman was sent to bring Sita. Ram did something unexpected at that point. He was very grave and told Sita that he had restored the honor of the royal house by rescuing her, but his duty was finished and he could not accept her back, as she had been in the house of Ravan for a year. Sita broke down and defended her purity in front of all the assembled warriors who fought so bravely for her freedom. She told Ram that he was treating her like an ordinary woman and forgot her extraordinary birth and royal upbringing. She turned to Lakshman and told him to fetch some wood for a funeral pyre. Lakshman looked at Ram and didn't see any objection in his expression, so he collected the wood and the fire was started. Sita called out to the fire god to bear witness to her purity and leapt into the flames to the screams of the Vanaras. To the amazement of everyone, a few minutes later, Agni, the fire god himself, bore Sita out of the flames, untouched. Then Ram accepted her back. Vibhishan gave Ram the Pushpaka airplane to return to Ayodhya. Then Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman, Sugriva, and others entered the Pushpaka aerial car Ravan had stolen from Kubera, the treasure of the demigods. As they passed above Sri Lanka, Ram showed Sita the bridge the Vanaras built. Ram showed Sita where he and Lakshman met Hanuman and Sugriva and the city of the Vanaras. Hanuman was sent ahead of the victorious party to announce to Bharat and the citizens of Ayodhya that Sita, Ram, and Lakshman were about to arrive. Lamps were placed in every home as a beacon for Ram. This return to Ayodhya is celebrated every year as Diwali. There was a great celebration, and Ram was coronated king of Ayodhya to the joy of everyone. Look, anyway, those that can see the screen. If you look at the monkeys on the right, they're all mugging it up for the camera. It's kind of a cute painting. So like a royal painting after the return. And this is called Ram Dabar, or it's the royal portrait of the four principal characters in the Ramayana, Sita, Ram, Lakshman, and Hanuman. And this is a South Indian version of the same. And it's said that anyone who recites the Ramayana, the story of Ram, Hanuman is present. And all glories to Sita Ram, all glories to Sri Ram.
I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody, okay?
Sure.
Very nice.
Okay. I'm sorry it went so long, but it...
I want to just say that was absolutely amazing. I can't thank you enough for that. I had chicken skin the whole time. You've really done justice to our celebration today of Ramanavami. That was amazing. Thank you very, very, very much.
Sure. Anyway, I need to do it a little more. I was tripping over some of the words.
Yeah, I second that. It was really wonderful.
Prabhu, when you were reading the part about Ravana talking to Sita in the garden, was it true that Ravana was cursed that he couldn't force a woman?
Right. Yeah, that's partly why he didn't force himself on Sita. He was cursed by some rishi that if he ever forced himself, he would die. So he couldn't do that. But also Sita's purity, her chastity, she couldn't be touched. Well, I mean, really, he had to... There's that story in the Korma, Brahma was crying about, we all know that story, that there was in the cave during that Janastan massacre by Ram, that there was a false Sita, a Maya Sita was created for the rest of for that part of the Leela where Ravan was able to take her away.
Wow.
When you were describing when Dasra got the sweet rice from the demigod that appeared out of the fire, he gave it to his wives, and then what did you say about it went to the monkeys and the bears? I couldn't quite catch what you had said.
Yeah, on the front end of that, I just missed something that...
When you were describing how out of the sacrifice the demigod came.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay, Brahma, actually Vishnu came. The sacrifice, everything's so abbreviated, it's hard to explain it all. For Dasara's sacrifice, the demigods came to this earth planet. it was a place that they would come for such sacrifices, because part of the offerings were meant for them. And so Brahma, Vishnu, even Vishnu came. And that's when the demigods appealed to him to please do something about Ravan. They were all having trouble with him. And so he said, then I will appear as the four sons of Dasarath after the sacrifice. He agreed to that. And then Brahma, who could understand that in the future Ram would be exiled, and in the future he would be in South India and he would need help to find Sita, he told the demigods to go to where the Vanaras were and to have progeny, to have sons. And they followed that directive, and Vayu's son was Hanuman, and these Vanaras, they were half demigods, so they could fly, they could change form, they were powerful. They were much more powerful than just the regular forest Vanaras. So that's how you get the Hanuman. That's how where his powers come from. He's half demigod. Is that clear?
Beautiful presentation. Thank you.
So there was a pastime where he met Bhima, and I guess Bhima was the son of Vayu, so they're kind of like half brothers or something?
Yeah, there's a story like that. And Bhima, he said, I'm too old to move, and Bhima started to, he was just going to toss him aside, and he couldn't move him an inch.
I have a question for you. This is Balabhadra.
Sure.
Isn't it correct that Hanuman, he's the son of the wind god, but he's also an incarnation of Lord Shiva, actually, participating in this pastime?
There is an aspect, he's worshipped like that. There's like he's got 5 faces, or, I've seen pictures like that. I don't know. It's, we're throwing a bone to the Shiva worshippers. I don't know. It's just, there is an aspect of Shiva that they worship. I don't know that much about it. But it's a way that impersonalists can get into it without accepting Ram. I guess. I don't know. And also Shiva is interesting. I asked the sadhu, it's Radhanath Swami. He stayed with one sadhu named Balaram Swami. Prabhupada actually stayed with him in India. He's an elderly, he was an Ayurvedic doctor, a Sanskritist. I asked him through a translator, because it appears at different places, not just one place, that place in Rameshwaram, that there's some worship or there's something to do with Shiva, and he replied that it's like Guru. They're worshiping Shiva like Guru. So those that worship Hanuman and as an aspect of Shiva, generally they're impersonalists, or they want to worship Shiva as Bhagavan. And that's how they approach Hanuman. We approach Hanuman as the, he's wholesale sold out at the feet of Ram. He's a devotee of Ram.
Also, you were mentioning earlier about the, I couldn't hear it because the conversation was a little too faint from this end, about the how Ravana was not able to actually force himself upon Sita.
Right.
I wanted to know if this is correct. My understanding is that Ravana had an instance where he assaulted an Apsara who was on her way to worship Lord Brahma, and it was Lord Brahma who put that curse on him. Is that correct, or what?
I don't know the details, but I know you're right. There is a curse, and that's one reason Ravan didn't just molest her. There was a curse, and he had to respect that. cursed.
You know what?
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mother Gandhari. We had a question before you from Krishna Kirtan Mataji, kind of an elaborate question, if I could read it.
Mm-hmm.
Says, Sita had crossed the fire, proving her purity and chastity. Till Ram banished her when she was pregnant. That separation was too much, and she entered the earth to leave her body after giving her twin to Valmiki Muni. How do you explain that Ram took seriously the false remark of a low-class man?
Yeah, I also have issues with that. I mean, I wanted to reject that book, you know.
Let me just finish your comment, okay?
Go ahead.
Upholding his duty as a husband of the goddess of fortune and assumed the duty of a perfect father. Is mass opinion more important than setting first-class example of a king in Grihastha Ashram? People do not understand when we share this part of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which I put in the chat there. It's 9/11/15 starts. Please comment, if you will. As for addressing Friends of Krishna, thank you a lot in advance. And then Mother Gandhari has a question after this.
Okay, let me deal with this. It's important. It's good it came up. I asked Balaram Swami the same thing. I'm bitterly, I'm saying, so some, Dolby, some laundry guy, he's taking Ram, he's disrespecting Ram because his wife spent one night out of his house. He's not accepting her back. He's not like Ram, right? And that, Ram was incognito, as the story goes, and he's hearing this, and then he's feeling, the idea was, that to, that this, maybe he's not the only one that's thinking like this. And so then that there might be other people that are thinking that he's less than an ideal, that he's henpecked or less than an ideal example of Dharma, of being a righteous king. So he made that sacrifice. Now, before I say this, the devotees of Krishna, they don't talk about Krishna leaving this world, okay? They just don't talk about it. The arrow in the foot and the Sura Mohan, he left a form. The devotees, and the devotees of Ram, they don't talk about this, okay? They don't talk about the banishment of Sita. It's too painful for them. And I want, Valmiki gives his benedictions at the end of the 6 books, at the end of the Vidagadha. And then the 7th book, even Sanskrit is seeing the style has changed. It's all over the place. It's some kind of anthology of stories, backstories, this thing, that thing. That real Leela ends at the end of Vidagadha. And that's where Valmiki gives his benediction. Says that it seems to be a natural end to the Leela. And in some Sanskritists, they think that this book was added later. And that's really what I wanted to, I wanted to do that. I wanted to say, we've had enough. Our hearts have been, it's too much to add that, And, but it is in 9th Canto Bhagavatam, like you mentioned. And then, so when I realized that I have to, what can I do? Lava Kush, Sita, at Valmiki's ashram, it's all true. So, but here's the thing. I told Balaram Swami, and I complained bitterly about it. And he broke into tears. He actually started to cry. And then I threw a translator. And I don't know if the guy's translating correctly or, but I realized I had hit a nerve. I'd done something that made a sadhu cry. So oh, great, I just made a sadhu cry, But it was some kind of, he was saying that it was probably the biggest sacrifice that Ram made in the whole Leela was to banish Ram. Even Lakshman, he had a big problem with it. So we don't talk so much about it. You know, I wouldn't include it in my presentation. I think that many of the poets and the devotees that tell this story, they end with the return to Ayodhya, and that's good enough. You know, we don't have to get into it.
Here? Here too. I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, that's what I have to say about that.
Hare
And,
Krishna.
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, I don't know about the noise in the background. So sorry.
Right.
You can hear. Thank you so much, Vidagadha Madhava. I wish you could do more with the incarnations of other incarnations like this. It's so absorbing. You're good at it. How about even some appearance of some saintly persons? Why not? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just wanted to mention one thing that you said about the stones with the names of Ram.
Yes.
Actually, they are present many places in India, I suppose, but I've personally seen them in Dwarka. Near Dwarkadhish temple,
Right.
there is just a small kutir, and inside you can go and see. They have a little, very little, like a puddle of water, nicely sealed, and inside is a big stone about 1 foot, different
Right.
sizes actually, and it's floating. And people have reported they're similar in other places also, you know?
Yeah, they're in Rameshwaram also. You can buy them. You can actually buy, they're coral. Do you know the coral floats?
But you think these are coral? Oh yeah, I see what you mean. So you
So-
took out all the mystery. You took out all the mystery.
Well, I'm not trying. You know, I honor that, you know, but at the same time, Valmiki's description is trees, mountain peaks. You know, that's what they're throwing into the ocean. And at the end of it all, you're looking at the satellite photo of a bridge between India and Lanka. Isn't that interesting? It's still
Well,
there.
even that bridge I have to discuss with Ruta Karma, because we heard that Srila Prabhupada said Ravan's kingdom was in South America, where he made a tunnel under the Atlantic Ocean, send all the gold from South America to India. So even to understand that little small island, which is called Lanka, is a mystery, because you know, we're talking millions of years ago in Satyuga, or Treta Yuga, I mean, millions of years ago.
Right.
At that time, we know that the earth, the globes, the continents were all connected. So Lanka may at least, may have been South America. What is South America now?
No, yeah, I get the explanation for that. There is a tunnel, and you know that they have a religion in Brazil called Macumba. Macumba, they say it's the oldest religion in the world. Kumbhakarna, Macumba, and yeah, there is some, but Lanka bears the same name. You know, they changed it to Ceylon, and then they changed it back to Sri Lanka.
But that's just recently.
Yeah, but that Lanka's been the name. That was the ancient name of the place. Just like they changed Bombay, Mumbai, you know, Madras, Chennai. They changed it back to the original name. And if you go, here's my take on it. If you go to Lanka, and I've been there a few times, and you look at some of these people, the Siamese people, and even the surfers that go to these world-class beaches there, these are not nice people, some of these people. And they're ravenous people. And genetics, you know, in India especially, I've seen that, you know, there's not only caste consciousness, you marry within your caste, but there's subcastes. You know, and I saw the extreme example of this in Gujarat when I was on a bus or something, and I was looking at this couple, and their ears, the wife and the husband, they had these very intricate ears, large ears, and there were nuances. I mean, they looked like they were brother and sister, but they're married. They're husband and wife, and the genetics they carry for thousands and thousands and thousands of years if the culture, doesn't mix with outside cultures. So I think Lanka's the place. That's the traditional place, according to Valmiki's Ramayana. And there may be some connection with Brazil or South America with Lanka. There may be a tunnel. There may be some extension of that, but I accept Lanka as Robin's place.
Just regarding the similarity of the features of married couple is, we know that we have recently also heard that by living together they begin to look alike after so many years, because the marriages are so long, like 30, 40, 50 years even,
Right.
So that's another story, but thank you very much. Anyway, thanks for
You there, Rob?
We have one more question from Krishna Kirtan Prabhu, Mataji. Did Balaram Swami reject that last part too? Why
No.
did Vidagadha Goswami include that in the Amala Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam? What is his point? Any comments on our previous acharyas like Sanatana Goswami or Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in this part of the Srimad Bhagavatam 9:11? Thanks for your merciful reply. Much appreciated.
So she just wants me to just address that, Balaram Swami, did he accept that there was the seventh book? It's in Bhagavatam. That's where I ran into something I couldn't, it's in Bhagavatam, so what can be done? It's in Bhagavatam. And it's right in the verses. You don't need a commentary. It's right there. So I just accept, somehow that's part of the Ramayana. And Kusha, Lava and Kush, they learned the poem, they sang it to Ram. Sita came back, she was swallowed by the earth. Or, she invoked Bhumi, and she entered the earth. And that's just part of the Leela. But we don't talk. I mean, if somebody has some sentiment for Ram or the Leela of Ram, they don't talk about that. It's like I gave a comparison to Krishna's leaving this world. The Krishna devotees, they don't talk about it. So it's a similar thing, generally. And I can't adjust it completely in my mind, but it's just the ultimate sacrifice at the end. I can't go there. I mean, I really can't. I love the Leela up to that point.
Prabhuji, it is
it's late.
after 8.
Can I make one last question, please? I'm sorry. That last statement that you just made, Prabhu, about how we don't just talk about these things, it seems kind of bizarre almost that the Supreme Personality of Godhead would enact a pastime that his devotees cannot talk about.
Well, it's about sentiment. It's about, if you have some sentiment, it may not resonate. It may not. There's so many ways to get absorbed in Krishna Leela, right? There's so many rasas, ratis, and there's flavors, so there's a ghastly ras, but it's not something we go to. It's a sub-ras.
Okay, so Prabhu, maybe this would be a good time to stop. Fasting until sunset, and then feast, and remembering the pastimes of Lord Ram throughout the day. You did a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much.
Yes, it was a very wonderful presentation.
Amazing, Vidagadha Prabhu. That was amazing. Really, really well done.
It was.
Okay.
And I agree with Mother Gandhari. We got to get you back again. I mean, you're really good at this.
Well, I think that Vidagadha collected these over years and years and years, so it might take him years to do another presentation.
No, he has more, you know. You guys should really press him because I know he has more.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.